Welcome to Friday, y'all. Hope you're having a good one. Hey, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, or better yet, or good afternoon if you're watching from the West Coast. Welcome to Trailblazer Radio, or more importantly, welcome to the Author's Alley. I'm your host, Mr. Frederick Beatty, and this is the show where we talk about all things literary and books. Not only do we talk about the authors about the books that they write, but we also talk about their motivation and the reason for the books that they for the reason for the books that they write. And also we not only do we talk about books, we also talk about life in general. I'm your host, Mr. Frederick Beatty, and thank you so very much for tuning in to us today. You could have been anywhere else on a Friday evening, but you're right here with us and you're rocking out with us. And I appreciate that so very much. So before we even get started, let me just get some announcements out of the way. Number one, we are on we're on all social media platforms. Well, not all, but quite a few. Facebook, Instagram, um, LinkedIn, TikTok. We also have a YouTube channel. Please do me a favor. Go to our YouTube channel. Check out our content. And if our content resonates with you, do me a favor. Hit that like button and also hit that subscribe button. And hit that bell notification button for me too. As well, so you can get notifications on when we go live or whenever we post content. And the last thing I want to most definitely say is thank you very much to our listeners and our viewers. You guys are the reason to why we do this. Also, I forgot to mention that we're also on various audio streaming platforms, um, Spot, Spotify. Jeez, I'm having a brain fart right now, but I apologize. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, um, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, anywhere that you get audio podcast and anywhere that you can get audio streaming content, we're there. So thank you so much to our viewers and our listeners. You guys are the reason as to why we do this. You guys are the reason as to why we continue to put out great content for you guys to listen to and or view. So thank you so very much to our viewers and our listeners. Now, without any further delay, I am going to bring up this young lady here, this our author of the evening. First and foremost, this is a very powerful young woman who's written a very powerful book. But I'm gonna let her tell you the story of this book and why she wrote it. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to bring up to the stage Miss Omari Canon. Good evening.
Good
How are
evening, good evening. I am well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you again. Thank you so much for taking the time out of a Friday evening to be here with us tonight and talk about this book and also talk about your journey as an author. I'm very honored. I'm very honored that you chose us to be the platform to do that.
Well, thank you for having me.
Oh, appreciate much love to you. So, if you don't mind, I want to get right into this. So, let's start with this. I know a lot of people who are either first time authors or authors or authors period either found a love of writing in some way, shape, or form. How did you find your love of writing, or what motivated you to want to write?
Well, I started writing since I was younger. That was kind of like my favorite pastime. I started with poetry and short stories. Um, so that's kind of what I did growing up. We lived in a household where you either wrote or you read. And so for me, writing was my passion. And so that kind of resonating. As an author, I would say it just continues to be a passion of mine, especially I'm motivated by the messages that I'm trying to put forth in my books. And so that's what keeps me writing.
Cool, I like that. Now, usually most authors I know have some inspiration or someone that they've looked up to, so another author that they looked up to. Have Is there another author that you've looked up to or that you kind of look to for inspiration, or someone that a current author or even a new author that that you look up as for inspiration?
I will say, on from a reader's author perspective, I throw you a nugget. I am not a reader. Writing has just solely been a passion of mine. So I can't say that I have a favorite author, I have a favorite book, because that is truly not a passion of mine. That is not my personal come from. I do have some authors that have become friends of mine, or
Mm.
at least associates in the industry. I would, and that's how I kind of connect myself with authors. But as from a reader's a writer's perspective, I can't say that I have a favorite author from that perspective per se.
I get that. I mean, because some authors don't have a favorite author, and that's their wave, and I get that. Because I think sometimes you don't need to be inspired by another
Yeah,
person to do good or to write. I
yeah,
know for me, my inspiration or my inspiration to write comes from a very, very, I won't say a very, very unconventional place.
okay,
And it's and I tell people this all the time. It comes from comic books. And people are like,
okay,
why is it comic books? I say, well, because I've always been enamored with those guys that write comic books. It takes a lot for them. I know it takes a lot for them to come with these already created, curated characters and create some form of established canon for them.
okay,
And so like writers like Stan Lee,
yeah,
um, Frank Miller, Brian Michael Bendis, those guys. So Stan, the late great Stan Lee is someone that I really want to have admired in my youth, because I see how they write and they bring the humanity out in these characters, to
yeah,
where some people think it's just like it's like entertainment, but it's not really. It's just
yeah,
is it is an art form, and it is something that helps a lot of people cope with things.
yeah.
So I think that's my little spiel. I tell that to everybody, and everybody looks at me like, comic books, really?
That's
No.
interesting though. But I agree that everything has to come to life, right? And if you already have the imagery, why not give it content?
Oh, most definitely, most definitely. I like that part. If there's imagery to it, go ahead and give content to it, because I mean, it's going to be something that's going to be life changing or life altering for a lot of people, for the people that pick it up and they read it.
Yeah,
Now, so you're not a reader per se, and you mentioned that because I was of the assumption that most authors are readers, but you pretty much disproven that assumption, to be honest with you. And because you said you don't read, you're inspired by the things that you do, and the way in your writing inspires you to continue to write.
yeah,
That's an interesting thing right there. And I like that you said that you're not a reader, because some people think that you have to read to be inspired to write. And
yeah.
you just disproved my theory on that. You don't have to read to be inspired to write. You can be inspired to write by the situations that happen around you.
Hmm.
And so, again, I love that, and I love that. It's crazy that you mentioned that, and I'm surprised myself, because, like I said, most of the people most of the authors that in my circle were avid readers first, and then they transitioned to the writing part. But you said, yeah, we're gonna skip level one. We're going straight to level 99.
Well, in my defense, I used to use writing as an emotional release, right?
Mm,
So I became driven to write growing up because it was an emotional release for me. And the older I get, the more it hasn't so much been an emotional release for me, but more so I want to uplift people the way I have been uplifted in my life. So
mm.
that motivates me to write the kind of stories that I write. And so that's what keeps me going. But I started because it was an emotional release, not necessarily like, oh, I like that. I like that book. I want to write a similar book. It was more like, no, I just love to write. I love
Right.
to use my creative imagination through writing.
Now when you wrote for an emotional release, was it kind of to help dissipate negative emotions, or kind of just, did you write based upon how you were feeling?
Yeah, so some when I used to do my poetry, a lot of the poetry were to release negative emotions, whether if I felt sad or if it was from a breakup or whatever the situation was. And then my short stories mainly were putting creative juices to paper. You know, I started writing short stories back in middle school. And my dad would print them out in like little booklets, and I'll bring them to school. Like I published a book.
Ah,
I was like 10. But even since then, I've always wanted to write a book, and it took until now to actually get my first book published. But it has always been a dream of mine to have a book published.
you know what? You right. I have a similar story to you. I have a similar story to yours about what your dad would compile all your short stories and then you send them to school. Um, Again, my love of writing comes from comic books. So me and my brother actually created a comic book and created a universe based upon another universe that we saw in cartoons, but we wrote a standalone story to it. Well, we did a standalone story, and my brother was a very avid artist at the time. I mean, he still draws, but not so much. So he did all the drawings and stuff like that, and I did the word of dialogue between the characters, but I also did like the little descriptive squares that are in the comic books and stuff like that. And I also did a little bit of the coloring too. So we did that and we showed it to our mom and our dad, and they were like, "What?" Now we see where all this extra energy goes to. And then we were like, we were the same age like you were. We were the same age you were at the time, and they looked at it and they showed it to our family, and they were like, yeah, like okay, we these guys these guys are talented. I mean, and stuff
Mhm.
like that. And I was like, I mean, we're 10 years old. We're just thinking
Mhm.
this is something to help us pass time.
Right.
This is something to help us pass time. This is just something that we do to kind of occupy ourselves in the moment because and not because we were bored, but because we were like you, we were
Yeah.
creative and wanted to do something that that edified us. And like you mentioned earlier, most of the time for you it was an emotional release, but it was also a form of edification for you too.
Yeah.
Because once you released the emotion, you felt better about it because now all those strong emotions are on paper now, have been translated to paper. And
Exactly.
now it's like it's gonna stay in paper.
Exactly.
Now I wanted because I always ask authors this because everybody's different with how they write. Now, how do you what's your approach to how you write? Are you mostly like electronic on a laptop, or or are you pen and pad?
I'm a little bit of both. So I always start my storylines old school in a notebook with a pen or a pencil, and I write out my storyline, and I give every character a name, and then I put me like my main character, not really a full outline, but like kind of like all the topics I really want to touch. And then I'll start, I'm pounding it just a little bit on paper. This was actually when I started my book. This was actually the first time I actually took it to the laptop, and only because I type
Mm.
fast, so I felt that I kind of got it quick, done quicker. And I also it was the flexibility of learning that I can type it on my phone in the midst of being busy.
Mm.
So this was actually the first year that I actually used technology to help me write because I started out on my pen. So I want to say half my book is written in a notebook, and then I transfer the notebook to the computer and slash phone, and I finished
Mm.
it there. But
Got you.
about half of it is in the notebook.
See, I'm pretty sure we're the same thing. We probably got dozens of notepads around that
Yeah,
has stuff in here with stuff going past the margins and stuff.
yeah.
Because I know I have a load of notebooks in here, and I'll be looking at stuff that I've written several years ago. I'm like, damn, all this stuff was I wrote past the margins of all these things. Okay, cool.
I like that
And
though, because sometimes you go back and you make your own little edit. Like if you're editing someone else, like, hey, you should add XYZ in this page, or what'd you think about this? And I ask myself questions to make idea broaden.
find yourself writing over top of
Yeah.
sentences that you've already wrote.
Yeah.
I'm like that too. And now, do you edit as you write, or you just kind of when you I mean when you get to the lab when you get to the technology, do you edit as you write, or you just go ahead and just write it out and then you do
Actually,
your edits later?
actually, no. So with this time, I'm a very organized person, and I can say I can be a little anal sometimes. But this was the first time because I have a 2-year-old and a 1-year old that was just like, you know what, we're just gonna get it done. And I didn't go back to read the book at all until I finished it. And once I finished it, then I went back and read it, and I'm like, wow, this is good, good, good.
Good stuff.
And then I read it to my husband.
What was his reaction?
Wow, good stuff. But also, this is a very powerful message, and we have a 2-year-old and 1-year-old, so we have spent late nights reading.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I get that. I do. Now you mentioned that you have you have kids, and then you have a husband. How important is it to have that support system of your husband, but also the grounding of your kids? How important is that to you as a writer?
That is hugely important to me. I am a stay-at-home mom also, so I pour into my boys all day. Me and
Mhm.
my husband, we are working on building them up. So we teach them. I do circle time with them at home to teach them, all the fundamentals that they would need before they even get to school. Me and my husband, we have a very strong bond, in all things, not just me being a writer, just in our marriage, in our friendship, in our careers.
Mm.
So that is very important for me.
And I think it's important as writers or as any creative to be grounded in something. I think family is one of the more obvious things that a lot of us can be grounded in, because I know for me, that's the most immediate thing, family. I have my mother and my brother are here, also my aunt and my auntie and my cousin, but also my significant other. And these are the people that's my circle.
Yeah,
These are when I'm not feeling so creative or I'm feeling down, these are the ones that circle the wagons around me
yeah,
and protect me, or better yet, encourage me. And so I think that's important that you have your husband that's there when you're not feeling so creative. He can circle the wagons around you and be like, "Yeah, don't worry about it. Just take a day." And then you have your kids there to bring that smile to you, because,
yeah.
of course, a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old, they're already curious enough about life. They're already curious enough about the world around them. So, and what better way to kind of what better way to I think to kind of let off that stress is to allow them to be kids and be curious.
Oh yeah, I say living with toddlers is like living on America's Most Funny Videos.
All the time, because they're gonna get into everything.
Oh yeah, my
They're gonna get.
toddler, my 2-year-old was feeding his um, toy giraffe our what is it? I can't even think of it. One of our plants, and I'm like, "But what are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm feeding the giraffe," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." The giraffe eats the plants outside, not in our house.
Oh man. And I know those are funny moments that you're like, let me tell look, I wish I had a camera. Let me take a picture of that.
All the time, all the time. I said we're gonna put up a just a camera, and just create a YouTube channel because we got content for days. My boys are funny.
Man, I tell you, but I like how you mentioned that, because there again, it's those moments that ground you, and you're like, and I know for me, when certain things get stressful, I'm always gonna go to a notebook.
Hmm.
But then when I'm not always inspired to write, I usually just go outside and sit on the porch and just
Yeah,
watch life pass by, and watch the cars roll by, listen to the sounds of nature and stuff like that.
yeah.
And if I'm really stressed, I'll just flip my shoes off and walk into the grass barefoot. It's
Okay.
it's one of those things that helps ground me and keeps me kind of in that positive flow, of what I do, what I'm doing as a creative, not only with
Yeah,
the podcast and stuff, but also as a writer as well.
yeah.
You know, And I like I said, your husband and your kids are the ones that help ground you. But outside of them, is there anything else that grounds you?
I would say consistency and a schedule.
Ooh.
I am huge. I want to tell you, I'm just a little anal. I really am. I operate on a schedule. I am very detailed based. It's a gift and a curse, right? Because it
Mm,
keeps everything done when it needs to get done, but it's also like, if it kind of tilts a little, I get a little flustered. But that keeps me grounded, being having that schedule or just having routine that keeps me grounded because I don't I tried to pivot a little bit. I'm learning to pivot with toddlers, but that detailed personality it keeps me grounded all the way.
oh, because toddlers will throw in unpredictability all the time.
Oh yeah.
So, so and because and I get a sense that you're a writer that likes to be on schedule.
Yes. Yes, I do. When I started my writing journey, I was with a mentorship program with inspiring writers. And in that, they give you kind of like soft deadlines to kind of um, get you to writing,
Mhm.
getting to your goal faster. So they start you off with like, hey, when would you like to have this book published? And then they give
Mm,
you like soft deadlines. And if you push it back, you push it back. But for me, I love that. I'm like, yeah, okay. So I like motivating myself to meet those soft deadlines.
right.
And so I would stay up late and to write, or I'd wake up really, really early before anyone woke up to write so that I can maintain that deadline and get it done. And I beat my deadline actually. I finished
Yeah.
the book, I think, a month before my deadline.
Yeah, you were more than on schedule. More than on schedule. Now, when you write, do you now? I think everybody has their little thing when they write. They usually have some quiet space or a space that's dedicated to that process. Now, do you have a space in your home dedicated to that particular process, or does it, or you just because you say you use technology on the phone, do you pretty much sit on your bed or sit in the living room and just type away?
Basically, yeah. So if it's late night, I would stay in my bed on my computer, on my laptop. If it's early morning, probably same situation, but in the living room. At some points, I was sitting on my terrace to right there. Just to have that quiet space, or my husband will take the boys all the way in the front and I'll stay in the back and just have that quiet space. But I don't have like a writing area, no.
Right. But I get it though. I mean, as long as there's a and for our viewers and listeners who are going to be watching this and are going to be listening to this, as a creative myself, it is as a writer myself, it is important for us to have that space, not either a space or a place to where we can be have that quiet space alone. Then and it's not just not necessarily be alone with our thoughts, but be alone with if we're thinking about a particular character or we're thinking about a particular scene, we want to be kind of be focused so we can concentrate on that scene. It's nothing against anyone else
Yeah.
to say, hey, leave me alone for a minute. Let me let me hash this out in my head real fast. And but it is important for us to have that
Yeah.
space to where we're able to kind of figure some stuff out. I know for me, as a person who's wrote narrative books with characters that are character driven books, mm, I can safely say that my characters talk to me.
I
I can
can,
safely say that.
yeah, I can say similar. Um, I write sometimes like in my dreams, stories come to light, and then I wake up like I gotta write that down.
Right.
I forget, and that's always been the case with me. I dream something, I'm like, I gotta write that down because that's gonna be somewhere. And it may not be in this book, but it's gonna be somewhere. I have these different notes in my phone and my notebooks with different ideas or poetry, and I'm like, okay, it's gonna go somewhere. But I agree. Sometimes it just comes to you, and you're like, yeah, I gotta jot it down before I forget.
Oh yeah, because guess what? That little thought is gonna fit somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
It's gonna fit in a future book, or it's gonna fit in a current book, or it's just something that you're gonna kind of file away for a little while and be like, we'll it's gonna fit where it fits. I mean, and I'm like that too because I'll jot some stuff down like, oh wow, this could be something that could be really really interesting, and then
Hmm.
I jot it down and I look at it like, well, it won't fit in this one, So I'll sit it over here and wait to see
Mhm.
where it'll fit at. And if it doesn't fit anywhere, then it's cool. I'm cool with it because it was a great thought, and I'm okay with it not fitting anywhere.
Right.
Because most people, and there are a couple of people that I know that are good, great authors, and they write down thoughts and then they try to fit them somewhere. Like, my
Mhm.
thought is don't put a square peg in a round hole. If it does not fit, don't force it.
Right.
If you're trying to force something that'll throw off the whole floor of your book. Speaking of that, how important is it to as a writer to have a flow, meaning that your book makes sense from beginning to end?
And that is very important for me. So I this is why I do soft outlines. I don't like to detail everything in the beginning because sometimes you get to writing and things that you didn't even think about in the beginning during your writing process, it kind of comes up. So with my writing process, I just write down my main points and just
Mhm.
let the mind and the creativeness just kind of pour out. But to have it make sense, that matters to me. I can't take one thing and it things come in pieces, and if it could fit, it could fit. If I need to remove it, I'll remove it. I took a whole scene out my book because I'm like, it doesn't really go.
Right, because
When I went back and read it, I'm like, I don't really like it. Yeah, I could fit it, but I don't really like how that looks.
and I get that because writing a book is just like putting together a building. You
Right.
got to start. First of all, you got to start with stable ground,
Hmm.
and then you need the foundation, and that foundation needs to be strong.
Exactly.
And then you put it in your walls, and then every all the other stuff comes afterwards. And after a while, you get a finished product. But if one part of that structure, one part of that beginning structure, the ground and the foundation, if those things aren't right from the start, then the
Ex-
whole then the whole book fails. And especially if it doesn't make sense. And I've read books that just don't make a lick of sense. I'm like, what the hell am I reading? No, seriously. I mean, it's the cover drew me in.
hmm.
The cover looked good. The synopsis was spot on. But then when I open the book and read and get into the meat and bones of it, damn, this book, this dude, all this person's all over the place. I mean, and if I think if you're telling a character driven story and then you have so many characters, main, secondary, and tertiary characters,
Hmm.
at least give them some sort of flow or organization to it.
Yeah.
If you're gonna, I don't, and I was like, and again, I wasn't upset
Yeah.
about what I was reading. I was just kind of trying to follow along,
Right.
and it
Right.
makes it difficult to follow along when it's not you know, a flow to it.
Right.
There, I think, and I think I'm anal when it comes to order in a book. In a book,
Yeah. Got it.
like I need to know I need to know who this character is, what his or her motivations are, why they're doing what they're doing, and
Got it.
I don't need backstory. Backstory is cool, but backstory is okay, but not necessary for me. I just need to know why they're here, what's their motivation, and how they're gonna accomplish their motivations. You
Okay.
know, Now cliffhangers, I'm cool with cliffhangers because I wrote a couple books that were cliffhangers, so I'm cool with cliffhangers, but not so much with you know something that doesn't sound complete.
Yeah.
Now,
I get that.
the one thing I will ask now in anticipation of you know your book. Now if well, let's go ahead and talk about the book. Now, is your book currently out now, or is it set to be released?
My book is out. It was published in February of this year.
Hmm.
So it is out and available and thriving, in my opinion. I will
Hey.
say biased opinion. I think it's thriving. It's made it further so far than I ever imagined. I guess I'll say
Mm.
that. So I feel it is thriving, and me and my husband just had a conversation just in the car because as a writer, as an author, yeah, the goal is to want to kind of make your money back because it takes money to make to make a
Oh
book.
yeah, for sure.
And I said, I am less than $500 in 4 months through this book. And I said, we doing pretty good.
Hmm. Oh yeah, good book will pay for itself over time.
you know,
Especially
and
when you make back the initial investment. Oh yeah, you're golden. You'll be golden after that.
so I was very happy about that. And I say that jokingly, right? Because as an author, I told you I am not a reader, right?
Right.
I am strictly writing because I have a message to deliver. And
Right.
so with my book is really not about selling books, right? Because I go out talking about my book all the time. We're not with the intention to sell. If you buy it, you buy it, and that's great. But that is not my initial intention, right? And so, with that being said, my book was published February of this year. I self-published on Amazon. I did have an editor. I did have someone help me format it to put it on Amazon. I did have someone help me create my book cover. Um,
Mm. Oof,
but
that's
but
a
I did
lot. You
publish.
did so you did everything. Pretty much did everything. I
Yes.
like that though. So I saw the title of the book, Dark Secrets. So without giving away
Right.
important details of the book, what is this book about, and who does this book what and who would this book speak to?
Okay, so starting with the title, Dark Secrets, right? I created the title because the book does touch some very dark places, right?
Mm.
Content, dark secrets. And so we talk about molestation,
Mm.
rape, physical abuse, drug overdose, mental health, prostitution. Um, so it is a very heavy read. And I tell people all the time, I recognize my book is not for everyone,
Mm.
because of the heavy content. And the way it's written is written in a way for you to really be in the shoes of these characters, to really be in that darkness with them, right?
Mm.
And so I recognize my book isn't for everyone. But it's not only for people who have dealt with trauma, right? Because we're raising awareness that
Right.
life happens, but what you take from life is what you become, right? So one of my popular quotes I would say from my book, and it's on the back of the book in red, so you don't miss it, is the past is filled with teachable moments. Take the lessons and become something greater. And I'm a huge advocate for that, right? Is that anything that we go through in life is to teach you something, whether it's to how to maneuver your next step or how to help someone else. And so for
Mm.
me, when I wrote this book, it's not an autobiography, but when I wrote this book, I did use some of my own past hurts to help me
Mm.
pour into this book, to help me raise awareness to these issues, to help me bring these characters to life, right? And so it also helped me be driven in writing the book. Why I was so quick, because I started writing the book in August and I finished it in less than a year because I was so motivated to deliver this message to the world that
Right.
life happens and it may not look the same, it may not sound the same, it may not smell the same, but life happens. And what you take from life is what makes you. It's not supposed to break you, it's supposed to make you. And so
Mm.
this book isn't for everyone in the sense that it is trigger warning for people who have dealt with some heavy content. But in a way, the message behind the book is supposed to help uplift those people. I told you in the very beginning, I like to uplift people. So
Mhm.
I done brought you through some darkness, but at least you'll know that it'll be worth it towards the end, right? And so the reason why I chose the title Dark Secrets is not because of the secrets itself, is because society has conditioned people's brains to think that these specific areas are meant to be hidden, are
Ooh.
meant to be stigma in a bad, negative, right? Like, oh, those people dealt
Mhm.
with that, they're not good people, or those people are no good. Like, no, why? People go through stuff and they become different people every day. right? And
Hmm.
so I chose the title Dark Secrets because society keeps telling you to keep these secrets dark. And I'm here to tell you, you don't have to keep those secrets dark. You need to bring them to the light so that you can bring more people to the light. People
Oh
are so
yeah.
stuck in those darkness and they can't come out of that. And I'm here to tell everybody, no, them chains is broken. You don't have to stay there. You don't have to live there. And
See,
so that's what has driven me and motivated me to make this book. And that's what drives me as an author and a writer.
I love that because the thing, and you mentioned on some, you hit on some very important points there. One of those things is that, you know, of course it happened, but
Hmm.
a lot of us, when we are traumatized, we end up pitching a tent in that trauma,
Yeah.
and we end up, or better yet, we do more than pitch a tent. We actually build a house
Yeah.
in that trauma, and we stay in that, and we stay in that house, look in that, and that's where we dwell for the majority of our life. But you just mentioned, that's not a place you don't have. That's not a place you need to be.
Right.
And you mentioned the other thing. Other good point that you mentioned is the alienation and the ostracizing and the stigmatization of what we endure as human beings.
Yeah.
Um, these things are, again, for our listening and viewing audience, these things are real life situations that happen to the best of us. They happen to most of us. They don't happen to all, but they happen to most of us. And I'm going to say this, and I'm going to be very, very, very honest with it. All of us have been through some sort of traumatic experience
Yeah.
in our lives, and it doesn't have to be anything overly violent or anything of that nature. That losing a family member is a traumatic
Mhm.
experience, even though people say it is not. It is.
Yeah.
Losing a family member, losing a friend to either violent means or non-violent means, or just through the natural course of them living their life, that's a traumatic experience for the person that's going through the grieving process.
Right.
We and everybody says, "Well, I don't go through anything." You just told a lie. You just told a lie. You've experienced something that hit you hard,
Right.
that hit you like a Mack truck, and yet you're still standing up. You're still standing here, defiant to the end. And I love that you mentioned that all the things that you mentioned, molestation, um, sexual assault, um, these are things that are not talked about.
Yeah.
These are things that are kept in the closets of our families,
Hmm.
in the deep recesses of that closet. You gotta dig through stuff to get to
Yeah.
that, get to that. And I like how you're approaching it, because a lot of our families have this don't ask, don't tell mentality,
Hmm.
or what happens here stays here.
Hmm.
That's wrong. Why does it need to stay there if it happened? It needs to be outed. That person needs to be brought to justice if they did something incorrectly or inappropriately. I like how you're putting this in a way that where it makes sense to people, where it can make sense to people. I mean, even the process, even the sex workers. I mean, that, people look at that as if it's a bad thing. But what if that was the only way that that man or woman could make money?
Hmm.
What if it was the only way for them to? What was that? What if that was an escape for them to remove themselves from an abusive household?
Hmm. What
You
if they
know,
were forced into that life?
yeah, forced,
Who's
or,
to
or
judge
forced
them?
into that. Yeah, forcing, or maybe already, or worse yet, forced into that life. Some
Right.
people, some people put themselves in much more traumatic situations to avoid trauma that they've already experienced.
Right. I'm a huge advocate for breaking those generational curses, right?
Mhm.
We have been conditioned generation after generation at generation, just like you said, right? Don't ask, don't tell. What stays here, what happens here stays here. And people have been raised and have grown up to think that certain activities or certain gestures or certain things are okay, or that
Mhm.
if they told or said anything that they would get in trouble. right? And so when I spread awareness, is not just to people my age, it's even to our elders, right, our seniors, because it was such a common place in that time that you don't say nothing, or it's just, oh, it's fine, right? That's
Mhm.
just so and so. And so I even address that community, right? Because our elders, right, our matriarchs, our patriarchs, they're the ones that maneuver our generations. And if we can break and change their thinking, or have them think a little bit differently, they can pour that into their generations, right? Let their young children and their families know that, you know what, if something don't seem right, maybe you should tell, right? Rather
Oh,
than that approach that they grew up on, right? And not to say that you could change all people, because some people you can't change, right? Or
mm-mm,
some people just don't want to change. But it's to
mm-mm.
raise that awareness that, look, we have to get the help that we need. And it may not be, legal, it may not even be mental health, but you need some type of help when you go through things, right? I said it before that we all go through things. It may not look the same, sound the same, smell the same, but like you said, we all go through something. So that is
Oh
the
yeah,
overall message in my book. It's not gendered, right? Though my main characters are women, it's not meant to be gendered, right? Because the
right.
message is, we go through things, but we can overcome it. And though you may not, or our audience may not have been through the things that are in this book per se, because we all go through things, the message applies.
I got you. I'm most definitely in lockstep with you on that one. Again, it speaks on a lot of things that we as human beings, but and I'll make this more specific.
Mhm.
We as black folks, we just don't touch. We just don't. These are places we don't touch. These are places we do. These are areas we. These are places we don't go. We don't travel to these areas, and we don't, talk about these things. I think it would be a different conversation. It would be a different conversation if we were able to talk about these things, but it's not a different conversation. And for a lot of people, it would be nuanced.
Mhm.
And then well, I don't want to talk about that. Well, you need to, because it happened.
Mhm.
I mean, because if you don't talk about it, you're already maladjusted at right now. You're going to create a maladjusted generation, and they're going to pass that on to their kids.
Right.
How about you break the cycle here, so that way your kids are able to maneuver in a way to where they're able to put out positive energy, and they're able to give that same energy to their kids. You
Exactly.
know, people, and I told a friend of mine that, certain things that we do, that we've been through or that we've experienced,
Mhm.
that stuff is a cycle, it's cyclical.
Yeah.
And every time we're going around the same circle, and everybody's just jumping in the circle.
Mhm.
Like, well, how about you jump out the circle and you cut the circle, so that way everybody stops going in a circle. It's, of course, it's going to hurt those people that are going in a circle, because everybody's going to come to a screeching halt.
Mhm.
But at least now you can, you, as the person that decided to do it, you can address it and put it out
Mhm.
there. And so that way now it's just, instead of it just being a hidden falsehood, now it's a hidden falsehood, now it's an ugly truth.
Right. I'm a strong believer in, if you want different, you got to do different.
Gotta
If
think
you
different
want to
too.
think that, if you want a different life, or you want a different outcome, you got to change, right? You can't copy auntie, uncle, grandma, and everybody else, because that's how the commonplace. But you want different. How you gonna get different if you copying what everybody else done did? You gonna get the same outcome. You got to
And
be the change.
we live in a copy paste society right now. We live in a copy paste society right now, where everybody wants to mimic or emulate somebody else, and that's cool to emulate someone. It's cool to mimic someone, but if you're going to emulate or mimic someone, mimic their positive attributes and
Right.
not the negative ones. You
Exactly.
know, I don't. There are a lot of people that I admire, that I emulate, but I emulate their positive attributes. Namely, one of the main people that I try to emulate as much as I can is my father, because I've seen what this man, how this man,
Yeah.
what the type of man he is, and I do my best to try to emulate that. even at 51 years old, this is this is a guy that I look to, and regardless of what I may feel about him, you know, in other ways,
Yeah.
this is still a guy. This is still I call my dad I call my dad big guy. He's not he ain't but he ain't a big but he's not a big person.
Hmm.
But he's a big guy in my heart. He's a big guy in my eyes and in my heart, because this is the guy that taught me so much stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I want to I'm like you. I want to do things. I want to help. I'm like you. I want to help people with the words I
Mhm.
write,
Yeah.
and the sentences and paragraphs that I put out
Mhm.
into the world. I want those to have an impact.
Yeah.
But sometimes impact takes time.
Hmm.
So the one I do want to ask you was, in writing of this book, how was there any part of it in writing that was difficult for you? Were there anything that was so emotional or so jarring to you that you had to kind of stop your process for a moment?
I would say a little bit, because when I mentioned drug overdose in the book, I did have a brother that passed away in 2020, and
Mhm.
um, when initially, we didn't know the cause of death, and
Right.
ultimately and unfortunately that was the case. Um, and so for me, having known that while I'm writing my book, that was a heavy topic for me, because I really did take his death really hard.
Mhm.
We were very close in age, we were very close in general, and so it was very hard for me. So I channeled it differently in my character. Instead of a sibling, I made it a friend, kind
Mhm.
of like that, because it is a difficult area that needed to be addressed. So I didn't want to use my personal experience, but I did want that in my book. So because I kind of changed it, I guess it helped me overcome those feelings while I was talking about that particular area in the book. But it was heavy in the beginning.
Mm. I can understand that one. I mean, when you write something that's so personal,
Yeah.
it is heavy, and it's like when you're writing it. I I can only speak for me, because I can't speak for other people that write. If I'm writing something that's really really heavy and it's very emotional, yeah, them tears gonna flow. I mean, because especially if it's something that's
Yeah.
personal to you, and you've experienced that
Yeah.
on that level,
Yeah.
or or better yet, even that magnitude.
Hmm.
To lose somebody is something that, I mean, I personally can't describe what that feels like, because
Yeah.
I've lost people that are close to me. I've lost a child, and I always tell people that loss is loss. It doesn't matter who. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
the who you lose, whether it's a friend, whether it's a relative. Loss is loss, and the stages of grief are the same.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter who you lose. The stages of grief remain the same. They don't change just because it's your son, or it's your daughter, or it's your grandmother, or it's your best friend. The stages of grief remain the same, but like you mentioned, how we all process it
Right.
is different. We're all going to go through those stages, but we're going to process those stages differently. Some people will go directly to acceptance and be cool with it. Other people may start at bargaining,
Mhm.
and then other people may start from step one, and and then also, or may go through all the steps and then end up being stuck at one step, being stuck at either
Mhm.
the next to last step, because you can't because some of us can't get over the hump with that.
Yep.
I count myself as one of those people. I mean, I haven't got to the acceptance part yet, because I ain't ready to go there yet. And it's not because I'm not ready to go there. It's just, I don't know. And you might be able to relate to this. If I get to the acceptance part, it's like it's kind of like a requirement for me to forget his memory.
Okay, I can see why you say that. Yeah. I for me it was a little different, because when I got to acceptance part, I've always been like second mom to my brother,
Mhm.
so For me to get to that acceptance was to accept that for once I couldn't fix it,
Ah,
and I had to get past that, and not so much like, oh, to forget him, no, because I show my sons all the time, this was your uncle. He was funny. I have a little Aries, just like my brother was,
right.
and so I can see similar characteristics in that little Aries, and I'm like, oh, wait, you and your uncle would have got along.
Y'all would
So
have got along good.
it's keeping the memory alive. So for me, it was a little different. It was more so the aspect of, okay, I couldn't fix it this time, right? Or
Ah,
I wasn't there.
I got you.
Or so but I can definitely understand where you come from, so, but always, just a little nugget, how I've processed, losing someone in the past is recognizing, well, their legacy, right? Or their memories, and how can I pour that out into other people, right? So at family events, we talk about my brother all the time because he was a comedian. He was born on April Fools. He didn't live short to that expectation because he was funny. So when we have, these family gatherings, we don't just ignore the fact, that he's not there. We talk about it. We bring up memories of him. We don't not have pictures of him on the walls. We keep pictures on the walls. So it's never to forget, right? It's just always, now it's just, their memory is there, is embedded. We're not gonna stop talking about them.
Of course not, because
You know,
and I think it's the memories that remain with us, the good and bad. And I know for me that acceptance part is kind of, and I usually kind of equate acceptance with forgetting,
yeah,
but now that you put it in that way, it's I think it's gonna be a lot easier for me to get to that stage. Get to that stage and kind of understand what it is, and kind of and take the mentality like, well, this time I just couldn't help. I just couldn't render assistance,
yeah,
and that, you know, my he understood the response. He understood the consequences of the choice he made, and again, I'm cool with that.
yeah.
That's the part of it that I'm cool with. It's the other the what I'm not cool with is just it's just the vector of how we exited,
Okay,
and then and I'm pretty sure you wrestled with that a little bit.
yeah,
The vector of how your brother left, the vector of how your brother left this plane,
yeah,
and where it could have been a lot more people, it could have been a lot more peacefully.
yeah, exactly.
So I get that. I do. So who would this book appeal to? And you said it's not gender. It's not gendered.
And in my opinion, no, some people may disagree, but we all got an opinion.
Of course. So who would this book appeal to? Would it who is it who is that? Let's see. I'm trying to figure out the way. The message in your book, who is that message geared towards? Who is that message point? Who is that message directly pointing to?
I would say that my book is directly pointed to, um, I guess, the trauma community because of the trauma that's in it, and I do recognize that a lot of the members in the trauma community are triggered warnings, and because of the
Mm,
extent of my book, they may not want to read it, or they may be triggered as they read it, and I do recognize that.
mm,
But as a writer, I wrote it that way because I want people to be able to heal with these characters, you
yes.
know, to find peace, and not so much heal because we all heal differently, right? But to find peace in their peace, right? And so I would say directly it is to the trauma community, but indirectly it is geared to anyone who's ever been through something and or even going through something and want us that simple nugget that I show them that I'm not going to stay in this space forever, or I
Ooh,
was in this space, but I see that that space doesn't define me, right? So I
exactly.
can say indirectly is geared to anyone that's been through anything, right? But directly, because of the content, it could be directly geared towards the trauma community.
Got you. And the message is really, it's a message, like you said, it's a simple one.
Yeah,
Your trauma doesn't define you.
yeah,
It's a real simple message. Even though you've been through this, it doesn't define you, nor does it make who you are. Of course, it's a part of who you are, and that's something
Mhm.
you're going to need to kind of that's I won't even say kind of that's something you need to you're going to need to accept
Right.
and forgive yourself for, you know. But it's a simple message. I mean, and I simple messages are always good for simple messages are good for me. Complicated messages are the same, but not so much because if I have to dig to get a message,
Yeah.
and it kind of doesn't make any sense. I mean, though some books are written in that sense for you to dig for the message,
Yeah.
which is fine. I don't mind digging, but leave some breadcrumbs for me to kind of pick up along the way. You know, don't put a whole loaf of bread in front of me, but not have breadcrumbs for me to grab to get to that.
Right.
So I like that your message is simple, but also
Mhm.
it puts it out in a way to where it's understandable. But like you said, your what we write is not going to be for everybody. So for some
Yeah.
people, it will be a hard read.
Yeah.
Some people, it will be a difficult read. But for other people, it'll be like something that's going to be informative, but also something that's enlightening.
Yeah.
And again, the message is to pass that message of hope to everybody else, to other people who who feel hopeless. I mean, and that's what I picked up on
Yeah.
when we were talking. Your message is of hope, and you want to pass that along to everybody who's feeling hopeless.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
I love that. I love that for you. And you said your book is doing well, so I mean that proves the point.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
I always ask two questions before we as we conclude as we conclude this particular interview. So the first one is, what does legacy mean to Amari Cannon?
Well, for me, legacy, especially having two young children, is always spreading the gospel. I am a firm believer in Christ, and partly because obviously He's our Lord and Savior, but because He has delivered me from a lot. you
Mm,
know, and in my own faith walk, I want to pour that into my kids, right? But recognizing that they will find their own path, right? Because we all walk our own path, right? So it's not to say they may not stray, but it's to teach them that look, we over things happen, we are not excluded,
right.
but we will overcome it, right? But then also legacy for me is spreading goodness. I jokingly say that my husband's the mayor because he's so friendly to everyone. And not to say I'm not friendly, but for me, I want our children to also pick up that be friendly, right? Welcome
Mm,
everyone, love everyone, right? Even if they look different from us, even if they sound different from us, even if they smell different from us, love everyone. And that's really what we pour into our children on a day to day is we accept everyone and we love everyone, and we want everyone to become the best version of themselves.
mm, I love
And
that.
so that for me is legacy.
Now when you mentioned that part. You mentioned to walk up to everyone. Now that's a little difficult living in the state that you live in, though,
Oh yeah.
because I mean I visited New York. I mean, and again, I'm a Southern guy. I'm from Georgia. I'm born and raised Georgia, born and raised in the South, Georgia, born and raised. My thing is to always speak to people.
Hmm.
Hey, how you doing? What's going on? What's going on, brother? What's going on, sister? And it's, I think for me as a person who's been and raised on Southern hospitality, quote, well, how a lot of people quote unquote Southern hospitality. For me, I get offended when you don't speak. I get offended when you don't speak to me. If I'm saying, "Hey, how you doing?" You walk by me and don't say, "Oh, what? What's his problem? What's her problem?"
I
And
will say New Yorkers, no, we have not been the friendliest, but I've learned, and I guess because I'm New York born and raised, right?
right,
So I already grew up with people not talking to one another, right? And
right,
I've recognized that we are such a fast paced state, right?
very much
Everyone's
so.
always going, 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 going. So it may not even be necessarily that someone is ignoring you, right? I've learned that in even my own journey, right? It's not so much that they're ignoring you or they didn't hear you, but they're so focused on where they're going or what's
Right.
running in their brain that they haven't even taken a moment like, oh, this stranger don't said something to me,
Right.
because that's not commonplace in New York. People don't, we don't always say hi. You may just think someone's on the phone.
Right. But the one person that did, the few people that did say hello back to me, it caught me off. It caught me off guard because I didn't because at that point I didn't expect it because at that point people ignore me so much time, and then when they say like, oh, she said hi. Oh, dang, my bad. Okay, this ain't so bad at all. This ain't so bad. But I mean, and I understand the fast pace because I mean everybody's moving at
Yeah.
such a speed. I mean, and for me again, Southern, born and raised in the South,
Mhm.
we are slow motion. we I ain't in no rush to get. I ain't in no rush to get nowhere. I
Yeah.
ain't in no rush to get to a specific place. I mean, I'm gonna get there and I'm gonna get there on time, but I ain't in no rush to get there. But and again, I mean, but that also is how my grandparents and my older aunts and uncles and my mother and my father. That's how we were raised. So be hospitable to people.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter where they're from. Be hospitable to people.
Yeah.
And there's a I have a couple of friends from New York came down here to pay me a visit or just kind of just live here, and they were like, it's different. I'm like, bruh, you going all that fast stuff, you gonna stop that here. You gonna stop that. You gonna stop that here because you trying to get to. We slow motion down here, bro. You gonna kill that. And he was like, and he's like, I can't get used to the pace of this. Like, get used to it because this is what it is. Even with like even with Atlanta being, Georgia being Atlanta being touted like little Hollywood and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I mean, for me, it's still gonna be that the Southern hospitality thing. I mean, it doesn't matter what happens
Mhm.
outside of my. It doesn't have matter what happens outside of my walls, outside of the walls of where I live, and things of
Right.
that nature. I'm still gonna be personable, still gonna be hospitable, still
Yeah.
gonna try to speak to people, still gonna, say, hey, how you doing?
Right.
To the neighbor across the street,
Right.
and that's cool, and I'm cool with that. But I've learned that a lot of people from New York. I mean, and I don't, and I have no problem with folks from New York. It's just for me, it's just like, dang, you don't want to
We're
talk.
not
I
that
mean,
welcoming. And
just
I won't say we, because I'm not like that. I've learned, and I guess I'm in a different space now too. I'd say maybe when I was younger, I probably was not so friendly.
right,
I've
right,
grown to be more friendly, where I know everyone, mostly everyone on my floor in my building, right? Or I say hi to everyone in passing, good
right.
morning, blessings, good afternoon, have a good day. It's become a commonplace now, but I can't say that I've always been that way.
Of course, I mean, and that changes over time. I mean,
Yeah.
mentality changes, and then also your perspective on how you view life changes as
Yeah.
well. So that's what that is. So the last question I want to ask you before we conclude. Now, I mentioned earlier that life is not a sprint; it's a marathon,
Yeah.
and mostly there are three stages in a marathon. I believe the
Mm-hmm.
first stage is the start. This is where you're coming out of the gate and you're beginning to get your pace. The
Mm-hmm.
second stage is the middle stage, I believe, is where you're at that pace and you're going strong. The last stage, I believe, is the finish. This is where the finish line is, and the finish line is in sight. You're still going at your strong pace, but you're nearing the end. Looking at your life in its totality,
Mm-hmm.
what part of your marathon do you see yourself in? Are you in the beginning stage? Are you in the middle stage? Or are you in the end? Now, the end doesn't mean end of life. It means, and a lot of people think that when I say the end mean end of life. I said no. It, the end means maybe the end of something that you're doing to get at the starting line of something else. That's what I mean.
I would say that in my life in totality,
Hmm.
I'm in the middle. I would say in the middle, definitely in the middle. I won't say necessarily I'm in the starting line. I'd say in the middle. Um, I know you didn't particularly ask this particular question, but just to throw it in there, in my author career, I would say I'm at the starting line.
See, and you pretty much answered that part of it. So you're at the starting line with that because you are a new author, and this is something that is I won't even say it's nuanced to you now. Your book released in February. Here it is June. So and you've been able to experience that success, the success that comes with having a book that's relatable to people and something that people can get behind. So, I mean, I think we're all at the beginning of something. I mean, I think we're all ending something to begin something else.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I like the answer. I like your answer. I mean, because a lot of people that I talk to say they're at the middle part, and they say that because that's where they are in life, but they also where in their career, they're at the starting point. And I've only had one person say that they were at the end of their marathon, but it was only because of a particular thing. They were ending a career and
Okay.
starting something different.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So,
Okay.
but you know what? I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, Miss Amari. I really have. So I'm going to give you this opportunity to let everybody know who you are, where they can find your book at, and if they want to connect with you on social media, for you to give those folks your social media handle. So by all means, you have the floor. Take it away.
All right, so my name is Omari Canon. My book is Dark Secrets. It is available on Amazon. If you would like an author's copy, I do have copies available. You can message me directly on social media. My Facebook is author Omari Cannon. My Instagram is the same, author Omari Cannon, and my email is authoromaricannon@yahoo.com. You can inbox me, you can email me, I can ship your book directly to you, I can ship it to whoever you'd like. I do customize signature colors if that's your cup of tea. I can
Ah,
also write in a pen if you like. I also, just to throw an additional nugget out there, because we did talk about, writing, I have a diary also that I created. Um,
mm,
and I threw that out there because a lot of people are like, "You have a diary?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I
yes.
have a diary," but it we talk about how we pour our emotions into the diary, right? And what that makes my diaries different is that we have these self-care pages
Ooh,
in the inside, and because again, I tell you, I'm an advocate for uplifting people, right? And
right,
sometimes when we pour out our emotions, we forget to do that self checkup.
right, right.
And so the reason why I have these, random self-care pages, and they're not all the same, there's like three different kinds throughout the entire diary, is because I want people to not only pour out their feelings on paper, but I want them to do that mental and emotional checkup. Like, how are
Got
you
you,
feeling? And let's kind of redirect this energy. And
got you.
so the reason why I like to channel these things hand in hand is because sometimes I do recognize that my book is a trigger warning. And so I wanted to let the audience know that I also have a diary available, in the midst of that. If you are interested in that kind of thing too, I also have copies. You can reach out to me directly. But lastly, I will continue to tell you, I want to uplift anyone. So feel free to reach out to me anyway if you just want some encouraging words. I can't say that I'm hugely funny, but I'm a little funny. I may make you laugh. I don't know, but I do post motivational quotes on my Facebook and my Instagram all the time. If you just want to check it out for some morning inspiration or some daily inspiration, and that's a little bit about me and where you could
Ooh,
find me.
ooh, I love it. I love it. I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce to some, but want to reintroduce to some, but also introduce to others, meaning a much larger audience, Miss Amadi Cannon. Her book Dark Secrets is currently available on Amazon out right now. If you want a copy, by all means reach out to her on her social media and also email, and she will send you a personalized copy. She also has a diary for you to come for that to even to be like a companion to you when you read this book. Because again, this is a book that speaks about hard topics, and it may not be a great read for everybody. So the diary's there to kind of help you get those strong emotions out, so that way you can still go through the book. But also if you see if you see her on social media out there and out there on the social media streets, man, say hey, say hi to her, and then say hi to her. You know what I'm saying? But also, the one thing I will always stress when it comes to writers, when it comes to authors, one of the things that I will always stress is that if you are so kind enough to pick up her book and you read it from page to page, from cover to cover, go to Amazon and leave a review.
Oh,
Reviews help us as authors so very much more than you could possibly even imagine. These reviews, whether they're 1 star or they're 5 stars, I personally read all my reviews because they help me as a writer improve, but they also help me as a writer to kind of gauge what kind of content you guys are wanting next.
yeah,
So please leave a review. I mean, if you read it from cover to cover, leave a review, man. Well,
yeah,
it doesn't have to be. It don't got to be. It don't got to be a 5, 4, like 3 star, 3 to 5 stars
mm,
is preferable. But if you read a book and you straight up don't like it, be honest with that,
yeah,
and put that 1 star there, but also explain as the reason why you don't like it, so
right,
that so you can look at it, they can look at their review and be like, oh, this is why they didn't like it. This is
yeah,
why they didn't like that content. Okay, cool.
yeah,
Let me make adjustments to how I write, or better yet, let me just add more informative content,
yeah.
things of that nature. So it's it help. They help. I promise you, they help more than they help us more than they hinder us.
Yes, and thank you.
Miss Cannon, thank you so very much for being here, to taking the time out of a Friday evening to be here with us. I appreciate you so very much. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. And I will most definitely go to Amazon and take a look at that book, take a look, and also purchase it if need be. But if I can purchase it from you directly, I'll do that. And I'll most definitely be in touch with you on how I can purchase a personal one from you.
Thank you so much for having me from the bottom of my heart. I am new to this podcast journey, so thank you for having me. Thank you for welcoming me and my story and my book.
Oh, you're so very welcome. Again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Well, please give a warm welcome, but also introduce yourselves to Miss Omari Cannon. As we conclude this, I'm going to leave you guys with a small thought. Traumatic experiences are things that we all go through. No one person is immune to traumatic experiences. It is what we do after we have the traumatic experience, that makes the difference. In most cases, we're always presented with a crossroads experience.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that, we are in the midst of that trauma, we're sitting in the middle of a road and we're presented two paths. Technically three, but visually two. The left path, the right path, and then the path that's least that most people don't even notice, the path that goes straight. It doesn't matter which path we take, because either path is going to lead to a lot of pain, a lot of
Mhm.
realization, a sense of perspective, but also healing and rehabilitation. So instead of just masking our trauma and sitting there thinking that it doesn't affect you and it doesn't affect everyone else that's associated with you or connected to you,
Mhm.
take the time to be at that crossroad. You don't have to make a decision right then and there, but take the time to stand at that crossroad. Consider consider what you've been through. Consider consider the consequences of not going left, right, or straight.
Yeah,
It's okay to stand there and consider things, but at the end of it, you have to make a path forward.
yeah,
And that path forward goes with you making a choice to whether you want to go left, right, or straight. It doesn't matter which path you take. They all lead down the same road. One path may be longer than the other one. The other path may be a circuitous route. Another path may be just a rough road ahead. It's not about To me, it's not about the path you take. It's not about the road that you travel on. It's about the lessons that you learn while traveling down that road. It ain't always gonna be peaches and cream, and people that are going to
Mhm.
support you will always ain't gonna stay on your bus. They gonna get off at their designated stop, and that's where they're going. Don't get mad about that. That's where they're supposed to get off at. But as long as you stay the course, as long as you stay the course, but also you put your unequivocal faith in God. That path becomes easier and easier as you continue to walk it. And that dark tunnel that you're rolling down suddenly becomes much brighter with each step that you take.
Yes.
That's a thought I want to leave with everybody, and I hope it's something that you guys can take with you, and use to improve your life. Again, on behalf of Trailblazer Radio and the Author's Alley, I want to thank Miss Amadi Cannon for being here and sharing her story, sharing her book, and sharing her journey as an author. We wish her the very best in all her endeavors. Um, and you are most definitely welcome to come back when you release a new book. So just let us get in contact with us if you got something else brewing, and we'll most definitely talk about it.
I definitely will because I got something else brewing.
Oh yeah, we can most definitely talk about that offline. But ladies and gentlemen, we love you. Um, I love you guys to life. I love you guys to live. As I always in these podcasts, I'll leave you guys with three things over the weekend. Number one, take care of each other. Number two, be kind to each other. Last but not least, number three, we all know it's a very, very crazy and unpredictable world out here.
Mm.
So please do me this one favor. If you don't do the other two, do this one for me. Do this one for me. Be safe out here.
Yes.
Please be safe out here. We love y'all. We appreciate y'all. And we most definitely thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys tune in to um, Critical Conversations on Saturday. My sis LHG is going to be in the house. Don't know what she's talking about, but I know it's going to be a good one. Sofa and Chats with T and K, and also to the point where my brother T Wade. Um, I'm going to be coming at you guys with another show. I'm actually going to be interviewing another independent artist. Um, really soon. So make sure you guys are on the lookout for that, and just follow us on our social media. We love you guys. We thank you guys, and we will see you guys on the very next one. See ya.